the Sina-drums phenomenon, from Marburg to the world. Introductory report. The lead. Good evening. Tonight, we bring you an investigative look at a digital revolution occurring not in Silicon Valley, but in a modest home studio in the heart of Germany. For over a decade, the world has watched through a glowing screen as a young girl named Düring transformed from a curious child into drums, a percussionist whose technical precision has challenged the very definition of impossible drum parts. It is a story that begins with a pair of sticks and a relentless drive to deconstruct the most complex rhythmic architectures ever composed in the history of rock and metal. The journey began far from the bright lights of a concert stage. In 2010, the Düring household in Marburg was already a hub of musical activity, led by Michael Düring, a professional musician and producer. However, the story of drums wasn't a calculated marketing ploy. It was born of a practical necessity in her father's studio. Michael, who performed under the name Mike, often found himself in need of a live drummer for his recording sessions. When a 10-year-old first climbed onto the drum throne, she wasn't just playing, she was absorbing the language of the studio. Unlike many beginners who focus on simple beats, was immediately immersed in the world of high-fidelity recording, where every stray hit and timing fluctuation is. This environment forced an early discipline. She wasn't just learning to play the drums, she was learning to play for the microphone. By 2013, at age 13, the decision was made to document this progress on YouTube. What followed was a viral explosion that saw a young teenager tackling tracks that had humbled veteran session players twice her age. This wasn't just cute content. It was a technical demonstration of a prodigy finding her voice in real time, setting the stage for a decade of rhythmic dominance. One cannot discuss Rise without mentioning her deconstruction of Metropolis 1, The Miracle and the Sleeper by Dream Theater. To the uninitiated, this track is a labyrinth of odd time signatures and rapid-fire fills designed by Mike. For a 14-year-old to even attempt this piece was considered audacious. Reportedly, spent weeks in her father's studio, breaking the song down into mathematical sections. She wasn't just memorizing notes, she was internalizing the polyrhythmic shifts between 6/8, 7/8, and the frantic 13/8 sections that define the song's midsection. This specific cover became a watershed moment for her channel. It proved to the global drumming community that she possessed more than just speed. She had the mental stamina to track complex arrangements without losing the groove. This mastery of the progressive metal genre became her calling card, attracting millions of viewers who were mesmerized by the juxtaposition of her calm, focused demeanor, and the sheer violence of the drum parts she was executing. This wasn't a performance of ego. It was a performance of pure, calculated precision that bridged the gap between student and master. As her channel grew, pivoted from being a solo performer to a global orchestrator. The Kai-Mite project was a revolutionary concept in the early days of YouTube music collaboration. Recognizing that she had a global audience, she began reaching out to young, unsigned musicians from around the world to record original music together. This required a different kind of mastery, the ability to serve the song. While her covers were about technical flash, the Kai-Mite albums were about restraint and composition. She had to learn how to create drum parts that supported a vocalist in Canada or a guitarist in Japan without ever being in the same room. This digital-first workflow demanded an incredible level of pocket playing, the ability to stay perfectly in time with a click track while maintaining a human feel. Through 3 studio albums, proved that her greatest skill might not be her speed, but her ears. She became a producer-minded drummer, understanding how the frequency of a snare hit or the decay of a crash cymbal impacts the final mix. This project her status as a professional musician who could handle the rigors of a commercial studio environment, far exceeding the expectations of a typical social media influencer. Behind the viral videos was a grueling schedule of formal education. From 2009 to 2016, attended the Drummers Inspiration School in Krefeld, Germany, Under the tutelage of professional educators, she moved beyond the rock genre and into the world of technical rudiments. This is where the boring work happened. Thousands of hours practicing paradiddles, flams, and double-stroke rolls on a practice pad. Reporters and fans often see the finished product, but the foundation of her mastery lies in this period of academic rigor. She learned the technique, a specific way of utilizing gravity and rebound to play with extreme speed without causing physical strain. This technical foundation is why, even today, she can play a high-intensity 2-hour set without visible fatigue. Her education allowed her to move from being a natural player to a mechanical expert. By the time she finished her studies in Krefeld, she wasn't just hitting drums, she was manipulating them. This period of her life serves as a reminder that mastery is rarely a gift. It is usually a long-term investment in the fundamentals that most people choose to skip. The ultimate validation for any cover artist is recognition from the original creators. For this came in the form of a nod from the legendary of Deep Purple. After her cover of the high-octane track Burn went viral, himself took notice of the young German drummer who was perfectly replicating his signature swing and ghost notes. This led to a historic collaboration where produced a video featuring and the Japanese child prodigy Sonor. For the music world, this was a passing of the torch. To see a rock hall of treat a YouTube artist as a peer was a massive shift in industry perception. It highlighted its ability to capture the soul of 1970s hard rock, a style that relies on a specific swing that is often lost in modern, computerized recordings. By mastering the shuffle and the triplet-based fills of the classic rock era, proved she was a versatile chameleon, capable of shifting from the clinical precision of modern metal to the greasy, blues-influenced pocket of Deep Purple. This cross-generational appeal became a hallmark of her brand, making her a favorite among both teenagers and the classic rock demographic. Despite having a larger audience than most mainstream bands, chose to return to the classroom in 2020. She enrolled at the RTZ Academy of Music in the Netherlands, specifically to study jazz and pop. This decision surprised many. Why would someone with 1 billion views need a degree? As our reporting shows, felt that her self-taught and rock-heavy background had left gaps in her musicality. At RTZ, she was pushed out of her comfort zone. She had to learn how to play with the feather-light touch required for jazz and the complex syncopation of Latin percussion. This transition was about more than just drums. It was about becoming a complete musician. She studied music theory, arrangement, and the history of rhythm. Her graduation in 2024 marked the end of her prodigy phase and the beginning of her career as a seasoned professional. The academic environment gave her a new vocabulary, allowing her to approach her YouTube covers with even greater depth. The girl who once mastered the most difficult parts was now mastering the most subtle parts, which, in the world of professional music, is often the harder task. The transition from a controlled studio environment to a live stage is the ultimate test of a drummer's mettle. For this test came during her tour with Rock the Opera. Performing at prestigious venues like the Vienna State Opera and the Palau La in Barcelona, she had to synchronize her playing with a full symphonic orchestra. Unlike a rock band, an orchestra has a lag in sound due to the number of musicians and the size of the room. The drummer must lead the ensemble with absolute authority. Watching perform in these historic halls, one sees a musician who has mastered the art of the big stage. She had to adapt her setup, playing on larger kits with more projection to compete with the sheer volume of a brass and string section. This experience transformed her stage presence. No longer just a girl behind a kit in a basement, she became a focal point of a massive production, performing alongside legends like Joe Lynn Turner. Her ability to hold a 60-piece orchestra together at the Vienna State Opera is perhaps the most concrete proof of her mastery of the instrument. In recent years, has pioneered a new format that she calls original covers. Instead of simply playing over a pre-existing track, a common YouTube practice, She and her father re-record the entire song from scratch. This process is a monumental undertaking that requires her to act as both a session drummer and a creative director. For each original cover, she must analyze the original drum performance and then reinvent it for a modern mix. This involves choosing specific snares to match the era of the song, perhaps a deep, damp snare for a 70s track or a high-tuned, cracking snare for a 90s metal anthem. This attention to detail has turned her YouTube channel into a living history of drum production. By recreating these iconic sounds, she has demonstrated an encyclopedic knowledge of how drums have evolved over the last 50 years. This isn't just playing, it's archiving. It shows a mastery of the audio as much as the action, proving that drums is a multifaceted brand that understands the intersection of technology, history, and performance. It hasn't all been a smooth ride to the top. As a female drummer in a male-dominated industry, and as a YouTube-born artist, has faced her share of skepticism. Traditionalists often dismissed her as a camera trick or argued that she lacked the grit of a touring musician. However, mastery is perhaps best seen in how she responded to these criticisms. With consistent, undeniable output, she never engaged in internet drama. She simply released another video of a flawless performance. Over time, the sheer volume of her work, nearly 15 years of recorded progress, silenced the critics. She proved that the YouTube drummer could be more technically proficient than many traditional musicians. By documenting her failures and her learning process, she humanized the instrument, making the difficult parts feel achievable for her audience. Her mastery is not just over the drums, but over the digital landscape, where she has maintained a positive, professional image in an often toxic environment. As we look toward 2026, the story of drums is far from over. With a bachelor's degree in hand and a global touring schedule, she is moving into a new phase of her career as an educator and a solo artist. She has become an inspiration for a new generation of female percussionists who see her as proof that technical mastery is accessible to anyone with a practice pad and a camera. Its legacy will likely not be just her billion views, but the way she demystified the drum kit. She took the most difficult parts ever written and showed the world that they are just a series of small, manageable steps performed with relentless consistency. From her humble beginnings in Marburg to the world's most beautiful opera houses, Dühring has redefined what it means to be a modern musician. She is a master of the groove, a master of the screen, and most importantly, a master of her own destiny. Reporting from the studio, I'm your name. Back to you in the studio.